everyone. Welcome to an awesome day of FileMaker Training. I'm Richard Carlton, creator of FMTrain.tv, where every day at 1 o'clock Pacific time, we are excitedly talking about the Claris FileMaker platform. I am today at Claris headquarters. If you look at the upcoming broadcast schedule, you can see that today we have a very exciting day today. It's going to be covering the FileMaker server. It's called the missing administrative tool for FileMaker server. Basically, that's not a joke. This is a great tool that can help you manage your FileMaker server. We're going to be covering that with Claus Lavendt shortly. We haven't talked about this topic in a couple of years, so this will be very exciting. The good news is I have actually taken his product. He sent it to me. I've actually installed it on my computer here at Claris, and it is working. This live stream is brought to you completely free of charge. If you go to fmtrain.tv, you can see the bundles that you can purchase. I'm going to pivot forward now to Claus Lavendt, and there he is. This is Claus. Claus, it's been a while since you've been on the show. Welcome.
Thank you.
Why don't you remind everyone who you are?
My name is Claus Lavendt. I'm from Denmark. I've been doing FileMaker development for a few months.
You said a few months? Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Actually, that was the word. I think he swapped the word months out with decade. A few decades or more.
Yeah. Actually, this year it has been 30 years. So
yeah, I'm at 34. So yeah, we started about the same time back in the day.
Yeah.
So yeah.
All
right.
Time flies. Yeah.
Yes, we're having fun.
Yeah. Well, I'm doing FileMaker development, and we are running a consultancy shop like you are doing. So it's basically it. And yeah.
And you're in Denmark, so you're available. Do you do mostly local customers, like within the country or Europe, or
no? Well, most of them are local, of course, but we do have a few customers around the world. So yeah.
Cool. So you can hire Claus if at some point you want to show your website and your screen and all that, that would be great so people know who you are. I'm going to throw you a softball and you get to hit the softball, American baseball. So yeah, in the world of FileMaker server, most of us will log on to use manage the FileMaker server using a web browser through a browser interface. And that browser interface, starting back in about FileMaker 17 or 18 or whatever, Claris chopped a lot of the features out of it. And so since that time, Claris said, well, you can administer the FileMaker server with the web interface. If it doesn't do what you want to do, like the features are still in there to like manage backups and things like that. But if you can't do them the way you want to do them, then you can use the command line, or you can use basically the FileMaker administrative interface, which is basically a REST connection. So there were three ways to talk to the FileMaker server. One was simple. The other two were much more technically demanding. And Claris, I remember Rick Kalman saying this, I said, well, we're hoping that people in the community can take advantage of the FileMaker server REST administrative interface and build a tool to help manage the server so we don't have to do it, is literally what they said. I remember them saying that out loud. And I'm like, well, that's kind of presumptuous that someone's going to want to do that. Of course, here we are. So Claus built a tool that helps us administer the FileMaker server better than we could do any other way, right? At least, and as we say in the world of like starting point and other things like that, it has a very compelling price point. Right, a very compelling price for this software. So now that we understand a little bit, like the web interface won't do everything, but there's still things in FileMaker server we need to do, then Claus comes on the show and shows us this awesome software. So there's your softball. I floated across the homepage, and you have to hit it now.
That was kind of a big softball, right?
Sorry, it's a big one.
No worries. Well, as you said, I built the first version of the tool in when Server 17 was released, and it was named the missing admin tool, and that was kind of just to be honest and frank and for everything, and saying, the admin tool that we used to have in FileMaker 16 and previous had some features, and we needed it. And a lot, well, basically everything was scrapped out from the new version. So we got these three interfaces, and they're not that hard, but to people who are new or are not comfortable with building a REST API interface or building a command line or using command line, it could be intimidating. So I decided to build this tool also because I needed to build some of the code for myself. And then I said, hey, why not turn it into a tool, a free tool? Or basically everything we share where you don't pay money, we share it as beerware, meaning that if you see me or any of my colleagues somewhere and you're using our tools and free stuff, you're welcome to buy us a beer. So that's
Beerware. I
yeah,
like that.
yeah,
I think that's a great idea.
yeah,
That's a great idea.
yeah.
Yeah.
It could be free, or you could, yeah, buy me
Or
a beer.
better yet, if you need a
Yeah,
professional consultant and you
sure.
like Claus, then go hire him.
Of course, you're welcome to do that, but I don't want this to be a commercial for me or my services. It should be very easy to find me. If you can spell my name, there's only one person in the world that has that name, so it should be fairly easy to find it. So, but shouldn't we just jump into it?
If it was me, I'd start off with the web interface initially just to kind of show what we
Yeah,
have by default.
yeah. Let me just show where you can get the tool first.
Okay.
So, yeah, it's on thebrainbasket.com.
Okay.
The Brain Basket. Okay.
Okay.
And you can find it on the first page. It's here. It's just released. So right now it's not that we are pumping out a ton of tools, but it does happen once in a while. Notice that this tool is called the Missing Admin Tool 2024-3, meaning that there was actually version 1, version 2, and now version 3.
Okay.
And this one has been released the other day, maybe yesterday even. So it's completely new. I haven't done anything. I just put in something here. And when you download it, there's a README file. And just to say, I have to stress this out. There is a username and password. It's admin.
Yep.
And the reason that I put in username and password is because security, you should always have credentials on your files. So that was just one of my things that I would like to stress out, even for free tools. And if you left your credentials for your server inside the file, and you missed the file, then you don't want anyone to just jump in, right? So open it up and admin, and here's the tool. So the first thing, there's a list of control tabs here, and the first one is the admin API. But I actually want to start another place because I want to start here at Ubuntu install. The reason is that many people would like to have an Ubuntu machine, a Linux machine, but it's not just a straightforward installer in order to do that. So what I did was I did set up a new server with a hosting service. I made sure that it was completely updated just so we don't have to wait for that. And then for installing the Ubuntu machine, there is a couple of commands that you need to run. And then what we got in 21, the new version, was that now there's a support for Let's Encrypt certificate, SSL certificates, which is something I have been championed or I've been banging Claris for a long time, and now we finally got it. However, it's not a real straightforward thing to install it and set it up. So I built this into this tool, some stuff that helps you, and I'm going to show you how. So the machine I have set up is in Ubuntu 22. 20 is the other possibility still, I think, and soon will be 24. It's an AMD processor. It could be an ARM. And let's input something simple for the FMS username, admin, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And we need a working folder. And the working folder is this one that I have already prepared. It's on my desktop. I'm on a Macintosh, so you can see here, that's the path for that. The OS name for this machine is router, and it's prepared on this address. And let's say host master.
I'm going to ask a question. So
Yeah.
just to be clear, you're setting up the root or the server address and these items here.
Yeah.
The FileMaker server is not installed yet on this machine.
No, it isn't. No, it's a fresh Ubuntu 22 and nothing else.
Okay, so it's butt naked, as we would say.
It's butt naked, completely butt naked.
Okay, got it.
So the server address, we need that for this installation. And then the host email address is for Let's Encrypt. Then I already inserted a SSH file here. When you set up a Ubuntu server, you can either do it with a password or you can use a SSH file. So that's a key file.
Is this Amazon? Are you using Amazon?
No, this not this particular server. It could be, but for this particular server, it's on DigitalOcean. Just another hosting provider. All right. So I'm gonna do this process. I'm gonna create install script and stuff like this. And as you can see here in my folder, I have 3 files: assisted install. There's a shell script here and another shell script here. Okay, and then I want to upload to my Ubuntu server. Okay, so I'm saying yes, and here is the first command. So what I need to do is I need to go and open my terminal application, which is here. And then I need to copy this one, copy and insert.
Oh, I like this. I like this.
And now I say, okay, I've done that. Next, and here's the next command. And I'm gonna hit here, and then I got here. Do you want to continue? Yes, I want to. Read what it says to you. Okay, what did it say? Yeah, so what I did now was I copied actually one of the files to the server. Now I'm copying another file to the server. And as you can see, bam, 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 100%. I say, okay, next, 5. Okay, it could be shorter, but I just chose to do it so that you can follow the steps. It's only.
I love this. I love that interface, Margaret. You follow that interface? That's a good interface.
Thank you. So what I did now with the 6th command was that now I logged into the machine using that SSH key, and now you can see I'm logged in as root on LCS 29. Okay. So here's the final one, and the final one command here is it's going to the right folder where we uploaded. It's changing permissions so we can run this dm install FMS shell script, and then we run it. So I press enter, and now a whole lot of things is going on here in the background. Okay, so now it's running, and you can see we can just leave it here. Blah blah blah. Okay, so let's go back and look what's happening actually here. So what I'm doing here is setting up. This is the most recent version of the FileMaker server. It's 21.0.2, then .202, and you can find this specific version number on your download page at Claris, your Claris software download page, right? There's a few variables here, Ubuntu 20 or 22, because that's those that are supported currently. I guess that some of the incremental updates, it's probably going to support Ubuntu 24 soon. Then you can choose between the processor types AMD or ARM because they are pretty different and they need a different installer. And then there's an installation directory. Typically, if it's an Amazon machine, their Ubuntu machines are configured in a way that you have a Ubuntu user, that is the default. For DigitalOcean, they are using root, so that's just the directory that you, as the owner that logs into the server machine, is having access to, right? The FileMaker server username and password is something we are using in the assisted install. I'm going to open that in a moment so we can take a look at how it's looking. And then there's a PIN code. The PIN code is for if you forget the password, then you can use admin, the command line with the commands to reset the password if you have that PIN number, right? And then the working folder is just because we need a place to put the files here. The username of the operating system that's given, then we need the server address for several things, and then the host email. As I said, that's for Let's Encrypt. So let's take a look at what's happening here. Let me just open with, well, that's fine. This is just a text file, assisted install, and there's a few things in here. Yes, we accept the license, which is important when you install on Ubuntu, because otherwise it's not on the interface. You can put in an organization. There's the deployment option. 0 means that this is the main FileMaker server. There's a FileMaker server user, meaning that let's use the default. And then we have the admin console user and password. This is actually set up just initially during installation. You can always change that later. The PIN code is something you cannot change, as far as I know. Should we launch the deployment assistant? Well, that's not really important. Well, that's not relevant on Ubuntu because that's web-based, right? License certificates, path. So actually, you could extend this tool and upload your certificate as well, your license certificate, and then it will be installed to the server as well while installing everything here. Skip dialogues because we don't want that. Remove sample database. Well, you should, but for this, let's just keep it. Desktop shortcut is not relevant. Filter databases, yes, we want that. The HTTPS tunneling, not by default, is something we want to do later. Then we have swap file size. I've set this to 4 and swappiness is set to 4, right?
Those last two, I don't know what the...
No.
Yeah.
So, okay, so very briefly, because I don't want to steal everybody's time, but swappiness is something that you need to, well, I think you need to install that on or set it up on all Ubuntu machines. So for those of us that has been around for a long time, maybe you remember back in the old Mac OS days before X or 10 or whatever.
Yeah, RAM disk. Yeah.
Yeah, RAM disk. Yeah. And that was something you could configure in a control panel. So basically, if the machine didn't have enough RAM, then you could configure it to use the disk, which is, of course, not as fast, but it would help so that your machine doesn't crash. Nowadays, it's just built in and managed by the operating system, both on Mac and Windows, where basically some engineers at Apple and Microsoft has decided how it's going to be best to set this up and have it running, right? But on Ubuntu, you have a size of this. So how big is this virtual RAM disk that is on your hard drive instead of in the RAM part? And then how often should it swap out what you're storing in here? And the swappiness is from 0 to 100. 100 means do it all the time. 0 means never do it unless it's absolutely critical. For databases, it's good with a lower number. The size here is 4, and that's just something I set in here You can change it to whatever. But it's the advice that I've seen around with from people who know more about this than I do is that it should roughly be the same size as your RAM. So if you have 4 GB of RAM, then you should set it to 4. Some say half the size and whatever, but basically around the same size.
Cool. All right. So that has to do with virtual memory swappiness. I've not heard that phrase before. That's great. Well, keep going. By the way, we have plenty of time today. So if you go late, it's okay, because this is really important stuff. So
okay. But anyway, this swap file and swappiness is something new that is done by the FileMaker installer. That's new in 21. It wasn't in 20, so you had to set this up yourself with FileMaker server 20. So if you need to set up a server 20 for some reason, then this is something you should look into if you are running on Linux. All right, so that's the assisted install and the options that we are putting in there, or basically we are putting in some of the information that we just filled out here. So here is the other file that is actually interesting because this is a shell script. And a shell script is something that is very similar to a FileMaker script. It's basically saying do something, right? And it's actually doing commands. So command line commands in a series. Oh, here we come to something, right? Okay, so it's actually pretty simple, this version, right? But it's doing a couple of things. The first thing it's doing is that we are installing the required Ubuntu packages, and packages in Linux, in the Linux world is basically applications. So there's a couple of things we need to install. The unzip, which might be already installed, but it really doesn't matter, because if it's installed, it just say, yeah, okay, it was installed, so whatever. Install vget, which is a another package that is installed. Basically, it's a curl version. Then we are going to tell the machine, build a list of things that you could update. And then we say upgrades, meaning that basically upgrade any packages that has an update. It's kind of confusing, but upgrade actually means update, okay? It's not a full upgrade. Then for this version, I'm using some JSON. So there's a package here, JQ, that we are installing. And then for the certbot, which is Let's Encrypt. The certbot is an application basically that is handling the SSL request and renewal. So it's a thing that we really want to have. So install that one, and then we are making a ln, which is a alias, kind of alias from one place to another one. That's something you don't need to think about. Okay, so now the second thing we are doing is that we are installing the FileMaker server. So we are changing to the directory that we just set up in here, install directory, right? So that's where we want to install from. Then we are using curl, and here we are downloading the FileMaker server version that we set up in Ubuntu, and it's a zip file, so we download it from Claris directly. Then we are gonna unzip the installer because it's a zip file, and then we are gonna move it, and then we are gonna clean up because we get some other files with us, and we are gonna remove the zip file. So now it's clean, and we only have the installer left. And here's the command that is actually installing. It's saying that it's basically saying, yeah, well, we have an FM assisted install file. It's placed in the root. And then we are telling the Ubuntu, well, let's install something. And yes means that, yeah, don't ask me anything, just say yes to anything and install. And by the way, the installer is placed in root and FileMaker server, and it's named deb. So running this command is actually what is installing the FileMaker server. and then it's raw. So we are going to do a couple of command line commands, right? So that's one of the interface. So FMS admin, then the user is admin, and the password is 123456. Enable client stats. And this is actually where it's a good thing to put in something like admin and 123456 during the installation, and then change the user and password afterwards in the admin console, because username and password is something that sticks in the history of the command line interface, meaning that if you get access to the command line, then you can find that in the history, unless you know how to delete the history. Okay, but anyway, we are running a command that is enabling client stats.
That was good.
It's something that we need to have on so we can see what is each client doing when there is issues. If you don't turn it on, then and you get issues, then you're going to look for the log file and you cannot find it because it was never turned on. The same with the server stats. We want to do that. Okay, and then here is a little calculation. So what I say here is set cache to a little less than half the total memory. That's what this small calculation is doing. Naturally, it's this is a middle thing. So if you have a medium or small medium server, then a little less than half the total memory is kind of fine. Normally, if you have a very big 16 gigabyte or 32 gigabyte, then it's a lot to assign to the database cache, and then you should go in and change it to something smaller. But at least this is something that is working pretty well with many medium servers, small and medium servers. So I'm taking the memory, asking for the memory, and then I'm dividing with 2.3, and then we are gonna do this server config, set the cache size to the cache memory, which was the variable that I just calculated up here, right? Okay, so this is just some basic stuff. You can always add some more if there's more to your likings, but this is kind of an example, and then we are basic good to go, right? So now we want to have certificates from Let's Encrypt. We have done videos before on how we install custom certificates, SSL certificates, but the Let's Encrypt is awesome. Well, it's free, that's nice, but it can update automatically, so set it up and never touch it again. So what we're doing here is that I included a version of the fm_request_cert.sh shell script that was written by a very clever Claris engineer who actually did a great job there, even in the first version. So I'm taking a version of that where I made a very few modifications. I'm gonna tell this shell script a username and password. Then we are running it, and I'm gonna say also that the server, the host name is this one, and the hostmaster email is this one, right? Then I'm gonna run this one, and this one will install the SSL certificate. It will request a certificate from Let's Encrypt, set it up and pack it and run it, and just make it work. And then we are going to wait for 60 seconds. And this is kind of a safety thing. 60 seconds is kind of long, but I've seen that sometimes it needs a little time before the SSL and everything is up and running completely, all the processes, before we are using the admin API to log in and do some stuff. And what we are doing here is using curl, logging in via the local, because we are on the local machine, so we are using the local IP. We get the token here, and here we are using the JQ library. Then we are gonna update the server name, saying yeah, and it's in here, server name, and I want to have the same server name as the domain name that it's set up to. You can change that And then I'm going to create a script, a scheduler script that is a system script, which will do the stuff that is needed to be done in the FileMaker server side when a new Let's Encrypt certificate has been installed. I know that you covered Let's Encrypt with Wim in another video some weeks ago or a month ago, so I won't go deep into this, but you need to set up a schedule, and that's just done here. That is basically running every day. I set it to run at 50 minutes past midnight, where typically nothing is busy there, and it's just about import Let's Encrypt into the FileMaker server. And then we are finishing up by doing a reboot. So this is basically the magic. That's the shell script, which is not that long, but it has the commands that is needed in order to set it up. I just wanted to show that I just wanted to show the terminal, because right now the server is done. While I was talking, I'm not speaking that much, so it was fairly fast, right? Now I just wanted to just show what was in the terminal here. Basically, we are updating, inflating, and all this is FileMaker server installation stuff, which no one understand what's going on really. But here we can see here configure Claris server, blah 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 blah. Great. Okay. And then what's happening here is that use client stats log. That was the command I just fired off, right? And use stats log true. That's also something I set up. The cache size on this machine was set to, well, it was apparently a bigger one than I anticipated. But anyway, 3 gigabytes. And then we got something in here about the certbot, but that's part of the installation of the Let's Encrypt part. And it is actually generating some feedback here that's done by the great engineer at Claris, and restarting which actually ends by stopping the FileMaker server and starting it again, right? Let's encrypt, blah, 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 without any errors. Thank you very much. That's what we really wanted, right? Blah, blah, blah. What was that? I don't know actually, but here we are changing the server name, and this is done with an admin API. And here is the other command that we sent that was for setting up the import Let's Encrypt schedule. And then we closed because we said sudo reboot, so we rebooted the machine. So yeah, so now it's up and running. Okay, so questions, yeah.
Go have a drink, get hydrated. Okay, Margaret, you want to start with the questions? Go ahead and you want to throw them out, Margaret, or you want me to do it?
I can toss them out. About the press next setup that you have, that's really cool. They are curious that if you just press the next button, is it already automatically copied to your clipboard, or do you have to copy it and then press next?
You have to copy.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah.
Next question. This is kind of okay. I'm going to ask this one: is the Mac OS installation different than the Ubuntu installation for the missing admin?
It is. It is.
Yeah.
Installation on Mac and Windows is done by an installer, basically an application that installs everything on Mac and Windows, because you have an interface, right? On Ubuntu, we have the command line is the interface. We don't have a window or desktop or anything. It's a server, so we don't install the desktop version of Ubuntu. So that's why it's very different. So it's command line when we are talking Ubuntu until we have something like FileMaker installed.
Yeah, it's pretty great. But that's the benefit of Linux. People say, why Linux? Because you can get the server for about half the price of a Windows server if you're buying it online or leasing it online. So that's why, because for me, it's like, do I really want to do command line stuff? I'd rather get my teeth cleaned at the dentist, which is not a lot of fun. But if it's half as much at the end of the month in your bill to Amazon or to whoever, it makes sense, right? So then
not only that, but it's cheaper, and since it's not running the desktop, so the machine doesn't need to use any processing power for running a desktop environment, or on Windows Server, it doesn't need to use any CPU or memory for running the Windows Server part. So it's much more efficient, right? Meaning that it's cheaper machine because there's no license, and it's also cheaper because you get much more power to your FileMaker server or what you're running on it than you get from the Mac or Windows.
So real quick, so up here at the top we see Ubuntu install. He doesn't really do a Windows or Mac install because at the end of the day, those are more simple, and we should have those as upcoming live streams. I will look at Margaret and or Jacob, but also, Claus, you coming back and doing more of this, you clearly have a lot to say, and we haven't talked about Let's Encrypt sit for 2 months now, or a month and a half. So if you want to come back at some point and talk about that, the audience here would love to hear you talk about that, just so you know. So
okay.
You have an open invitation to do that. So if we go backwards a moment and look at the tab controls across the top of this tool that you have, we're looking at Ubuntu install, which is a fairly new tab. I've not seen that before. That helps us with the installation. Someone like me, I'm not a command. I could do command line if I have specific instructions, but the Ubuntu install helps me, which is great. SSL certificate makes sense to me. SSL info is some sort of, those two to the right are somehow as part of the SSL install. Then the items to the left are the ones that we've had historically, right? Do you want to talk about these a little bit?
Sure. If there wasn't any other questions that we...
Margaret, do we have any other...
we have other questions before we move
forward. Okay, go ahead, Margaret.
Yeah.
Okay. So, is there a solution for using all CPU cores? On my 48-core Xeon FMS, it is only using 2 cores.
Okay, stop. That should not be the case. FileMaker Server is multi-threaded, not Pro. If you're using FileMaker Pro on a 48-core, then it'll use 1 or 2. But on FileMaker Server, say you have 10 people logged in and each person does a find at the same time, generally each of those find requests is going to get dumped off onto its own core. So you should see that. It doesn't, so it's not like one person's request gets spread over 48 cores. My understanding of this, talking to Clay at Claris about this back in the day, was that that as individual users would be doing stuff, their requests would jump onto a different processor. Claus, you want to comment on that at all?
No, well, that's the simple version of it. It's of course it's more technical because there's several processes running on FileMaker Server. So some are spreading out on a couple of cores, and depending on how much they are doing, they are spreading out more or less. So it's something that is dynamically handled, and it's really technical. So yeah, but.
Yeah, it's not an adjustable switch, but because some things in FileMaker have to happen sequentially, synchronously. If it's an asynchronous process where the things are not dependent upon each other, then they can be farmed out to different processes, and they're completed when they're completed. So once again, I think it will take advantage of them. But if you're just looking at your FileMaker server and you yourself are doing a bunch of, say, commands to it with one client, you may only use one process or 2 processes or processors. So cores. So just keep that in mind. All right, next question, Mark.
It is, what if you don't want to include the install of the certificate, certbot, etc.?
Yeah, well, then you're just gonna modify the script. Of course, just modify the script. Take it out.
Okay.
Yeah.
And it won't break it. Cool. Next question. Ubuntu should include the shell for FileMaker Server? Question mark.
Repeat the question, Margaret. One more time.
Yes, please.
Ubuntu should include the shell for FileMaker Server? Question mark.
No. There's no shell There's no shell. There's a shell script. The shell is that's an application, and there's several flavors of that, but that's really not important. It is included in the Ubuntu, but FileMaker Server is not included as a standard package that you could just say ADP, what was it? Well, the application that you're using to install with. So it's not like you can say apt, that was one, install FileMaker Server. That would be easy, but the package is not in those public repositories where you could just install FileMaker Server from. That's why we need to download it to the machine, unpack it, and install it locally on the machine instead of doing like this. I imagine there's a bunch of reasons why FileMaker doesn't have their FileMaker Server installation package just on these repositories. But I don't know the reason, but I would imagine that Apple security and something like that has a lot to say about that. So yeah.
Yes, which also the follow-up is basically that they're asking about, is there a graphical user interface bundled with server when you install it on your
No. There's no, well, yes and no.
Yes. I was waiting for that. There you go. Yes and no.
Well, there's no desktop like your normal laptop computer or desktop computer if you have one of that. But there is a graphical user interface, which is the FileMaker admin console, which it's named, or if I refer to it anywhere, it's also called FAC. But that's something you shouldn't be confused with. That's the FileMaker admin console. And when I log in here, you have a graphical interface. And if we are clicking here, we can see and show the certificate. We can see here it's installed by Digital. Where is it? Let's Encrypt. This is the Let's Encrypt certificate here. Yeah, here it is, organization Let's Encrypt. So that's where you can see that it actually installed Let's Encrypt on this one. This is the graphical user interface.
Yeah, so this is the web interface. So the web administrative console, right? And so that's one of the three interfaces that are available to administer FileMaker Server. To be clear, this Ubuntu install is kind of a separate conversation. We're talking about essentially helping us get through the command line to do the installation, to get FileMaker Server running. Once it's running, then we use one of the three interfaces to control it, to talk to it, right? So on the live stream, we talk about the web browser administrative interface all the time, but some things are not in it. And sometimes.
Sure. Okay, so are there other questions that we need to address right now, or important ones? Good. So this is the web admin console or the FileMaker admin console. It's the same one as this. Yep. You need to do the login here, but basically you can do all the stuff other than downloading. You can do this. This is a web viewer, right? And then we have the main controls. Yeah, well, that should be admin API. So logging in here, it says that it's running PHP enabled, and you can see it says it doesn't say either yes or no. It's because the PHP API, that's not PHP, but the PHP API that was bundled with FileMaker Server is deprecated, and it's removed for Ubuntu. I believe it's actually removed from also Windows and Mac. But if you have an older server where PHP is installed, you can turn it on and off here. XML was going out, but it's being kept inside Data REST API.
Yep.
Data REST API. You can turn on the web publishing engine. And just note here, if you have more than one VPE, web publishing engine, For WebDirect's machines, then we are only looking at the first one here. So it's showing something, but it's not everything, WebDirect and XDBC. So here you can see we have the cache size here. You can see 256 files on the server, maximum 250 clients, and this is default values. You can just turn them up or down to the whatever is allowed here. Auto-start database engine, auto-start web publishing engine, and here's something. Actually, these two is leftovers. They were removed from the product in 19. Thank God. Because it was not working, and Richard can do a session about that if he wants to. Anyway, here is open databases on start. Please disable, and that was actually meant to be false. Actually, that should have been in the script. And why? It's because if the server crashes and the files are just being opened without you as the responsible noticing it, then the files could have some damages that you wouldn't see until much, much later, where you don't have a good backup copy. Okay, and finally, there's some PHP settings down here if you have PHP, right? You can see how many clients are connected. You have a tab for files and you have a tab for clients. One of the nice thing here is that you have this gray bar for each of the folders. So when you have 200 files on the server, if you have that, you would want to divide it into separate folders on the server. And that is something that you cannot see on the web interface. You just see a list, a long list. You have a lot of them, but you cannot see if you have divided them into, this is for the sales department, this is for whatever, right? Or whatever way you want to divide it into. But actually in this interface, you can see it here. You can perform actions on all of the files or none, or just check those that you want to do something on. So yeah, it's giving you all those things. You can see the clients here connected, the username and whatever. You can do actions on the selected, or you can do it on everyone. So it gives you some stuff here. And this is the main controls. There's a lot of things they put into the admin API. Really fast iterations over time. So the admin API here, I just did something here that is read-only. So basically what I'm doing now is that I'm running a handful of calls on the endpoints in order to collect all the information here. So you can see the server status, metadata, general config, and so on. Even if you see these toggles, they are not working. It's just for read-only, it says here, right? The point with this is that you can just extend it, right? You can see, oh, all this stuff is actually available to me. And where there are toggles, for example, then of course you can put in a call that says, I want to have a switch here. So you can build the scripts in order to do so, right? So that was the point here. Because otherwise I would never finish up if I built it a complete admin console with the admin API, which is kind of stupid if we already have the control inside the web admin interface, right?
Yeah.
So I didn't go and refactor everything, some of the things, right? So let me just, I'm just gonna jump fast over here to the command lines. This is something I'm actually a little bit proud of, because these are all the command lines that are there, even all the official ones and also some unofficial ones. That is not documented. But these are all the commands that you could fire in. So server stats here, FMS admin, enable server stats. It has a description here. What is it? So you can read about it. This is the official documentation. And you can add credentials here. So you can just copy this one. and paste it into your command line interface, and then it has the username and password as well. And this username and password, it takes it from here, the main controls, right? So you can add it or don't add it, and then you have the command here. One of the things that, so what I really wanted to find now was one of the unofficial, oh, really? So maybe actually I don't have the unofficial ones.
I feel
Okay.
an update coming for your tool.
Yeah, it feels like it's an update coming because I have another version. Okay, so actually under sets, there should be another one. No, yeah, there should be a fourth one, which is not documented, that has some secrets commands that you could use. But yeah.
Real quick, this is really great what he's doing here. I want to cover something for those of you kind of new to this conversation here a little bit. I don't want to talk too close to the microphone. So fundamentally, if you have a FileMaker server that's installed, someone sets it up for you, you will have a web interface here. This is what you will have. This is all that you have, okay? Then Claus built a tool so this is the, I will say the method number one to control the FileMaker server. These two over here essentially constitute method number two to manage the server. So this is really where the tool came from in its origination, okay? Admin interface number one, right here. Admin number two. The third one is this command line, okay? And so most of us are comfortable, we're FileMaker people, we're graphical people, we're comfortable with number one. People like Jacob, smart people, Jacob and Claus are happy with number 2 and 3, but they brought it out and gave us an interface for it. The log viewer is helpful in viewing logs, which is kind of this is like a bonus feature. I'll put the word bonus over here. This is another bonus feature over here that he spent time talking about to help us build a inexpensive FileMaker server or a less expensive FileMaker server, right? I've made a mess here, but for the people who are fairly new or less experienced, does this make sense what I've said? So, I mean, I've kind of made a mess out of it. I do apologize. Yeah. Mark, questions?
No, that's very cool. I really love the command line feature. That's incredibly cool. That's
Cool.
one of those things that always feels super inaccessible when you are.
Okay, the log. Okay, just to be clear, the log viewer here. So before it'll work, you have to download. You have to bring it in here. Is that what you have to download and bring it in, Claus? And then it shows it.
Yeah.
Okay, this is what a log is supposed to look like. It's a bunch of tightly packed stuff that shows a lot of data across. There's not a lot of white space in between the lines. That's what a log is supposed to look like. When you look at it over in here, it's like you'll get this much data and it'll take the entire screen because they put a bunch of spaces in between it. It's just really hard to have a in-depth analysis when you have issues like that. So these are great tools to have. And I want to encourage Claus to come back and talk about more of this because clearly he could talk about this for probably 2 or 3 hours real easy. Right. So
yeah, well, the log viewer is just a simple tool that has a filter that is super fast, right? So so you can just find whatever you need pretty fast just by filtering.
That's great. I love it.
So
Go ahead.
faster than what Claris has in in the web admin console.
There's a question about connecting multiple servers. I tried that already, and I brought that up right before the live stream started. This tool is unlocked, and so if you want to support more than one FileMaker server, you're going to have to make an adjustment yourself in there. I was playing with that a little bit, and and like for example, I think the host name here is a global or whatever. Yeah, so I had to start adding records, and Claus is only going to do so much for free. So let's just be clear. So either do it yourself or send him a check for $5,000 or something, but you get the idea, right?
So what you can do, right? This database is completely open and free, so you can just go in here and do stuff you want to. There's a table for command line commands. There's what we call an interface, which is a one record table that has a handful of globals and some stored fields as well. There's a virtual list for clients and a virtual list for virtual info. So virtual list is a great technique, and there's only a few records in here. It's a pretty simple database. You can just go and change that if you want to, right? So you can change it to several records and change from globals to stored, right? Also, what I wanted to show was that if you have been looking at this tool before, there's some new stuff here. So one of the things was that I put in a script here called the API parameters JSON. So what I actually did was I modularized the code. It's in thread with a session I did at Claris Engage about how to use function scripts and utility scripts as kind of like when you have a script insert from URL, there's a bunch of code below that line of code here, or that line in our script. So the idea is that you put it in and you use it as a custom function or a function, but it's a script that you build once and never look at again, right? So it's put in here, get config and status. So we are just running and calling, okay, this is old code. No, here is some new code. So putting in here and calling the API, and we are just running there. Like I said, okay, so these are the ones. So if you want to add, if FileMaker has a new endpoint, you're just copying the script here, like this one, and say, okay, so what is the endpoint? So just putting in the endpoint here, and then you're good to go.
There is a question real quick. Someone said, if we take your file and we close it, we duplicate it, and they have different files for different servers, does that solve their multi-server challenge?
Yeah, sure. That's a very low
tech answer. Yeah, but that's good. I like simple is easy and good. Yeah, so there we go.
Simple is good, for sure.
Good job, Claus. Seriously, this is great. I could actually use it because I have a Linux server. Jacob gave me a Linux server, and I'm like, oh, I have to live only within the realm of the web admin. If I'm going to draw over here, I have to live over here, right? And now I can live dangerously over here, which makes me much happier. And Jacob's like, ah. So yeah. But yeah.
Sure.
All right.
Just forgot to share the password with you, Richard.
Yes.
Forgot.
Yeah. Forgot the password. Claus, please come back. Please come back.
Sure.
Please. Please.
Yeah.
Pretty please.
Well,
great. I learned stuff.
I've been on your show a couple of times, right? We have known each other for several years, and I haven't been running away screaming. That's something.
That does happen once in a while. Yeah. Thanks, Claus, from David Angel. Jacob Taylor says thanks. Yeah, they want to have you back. So anytime, just let us know. We have an open invitation.
Okay.
Sure. And yeah. So let me just say again, please. Oh, yeah. Thebrainbasket.com. Share that with people, and yeah, thebrainbasket.com.
Yeah, so you'll sign up for his newsletter. The Claus will send you a newsletter, but please feel free. At a minimum, you owe him a beer. At an absolute minimum.
Well, I won't send any newsletter. I just say that if you download the tool for free, then you could get up to 4 newsletters a year. It doesn't happen. But maybe if I get some time, then I could write one and say here's the new version of the free one. You're not going to be spammed.
All right. Thanks, everyone.
All right, everyone. Bye.
Thank you.